All right, before I get started tonight, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's been joining. It's been really exciting for me to watch all of you post the pictures of what you're creating. I also want to really encourage you all to give yourself some grace, because what I'm seeing a lot in the group, excuse me, is that people are kind of making disclaimers like, oh, this is my first time, or I don't have the right tools, or it's off center, or bad lighting. And I'm not saying those things aren't valid and your feelings aren't valid, because I critique my artwork all the time. But what I want you to understand with this challenge is, for many of you, this is your first time, or you're pretty new to dotting. And so nobody's excellent right off the bat, first of all. Second of all, we are not computers, we are not printers, and there is something really emotional, really personal about art that you make, and it's not going to be perfect. If we wanted designs to be, computer generated and absolutely perfect, we would be graphic designers and not artists. So think about it a little differently. Also, what I wanted to do this week is work with the bare minimum. I didn't want you to have to go out and buy a lot of tools and a lot of stuff. And so we are doing this with the basics. This is how I learned dot art over a decade ago. It's been a really long time. I didn't have tools at that point. They didn't even make tools. We used crochet needles or crochet hooks. I used the end of those because they varied in size. And I used drill bits. So things have changed a lot. You can get stencils. So here's a sample of a stencil that I sometimes use to make grids on your piece, and that will make everything so much easier. Okay, we're doing this by eye and by hand, and that's why it's a little more difficult. But my thought process was, if you can work through this week and learn the process of doing it completely by hand, when you start to use the tools, like stencils and grid lines and chalk pencils to make your marks and have everything lined up, things are really, really going to fall into place for you. So it only gets easier from here. This is absolutely the bare basics that we're doing this week. And it's important to me to start simple, because there are a lot of people who may join in this week who may never choose to dot again. And it doesn't make sense for me to ask people to go out and buy, a ton of supplies for just a few projects. So I wanted to make sure before people start investing in a hobby that they like it. But you can make beautiful things without these grids and without these marks, certainly. So I just want to encourage you. Everything that I've seen this week is absolutely beautiful. Remember, you are your own worst critic. All of us are looking at your artwork saying, oh my gosh, it looks so good. And then you're going to look at it and be like, well, but I see this little mistake and I see that little mistake. And that is human nature. We all do that. I absolutely do that to myself. But when you're looking at the finished piece, and this is what we're making tonight, remember, you're looking at the finished piece as a whole. You're not looking for every little mistake like when you create it. So I absolutely have been super impressed with all the things y'all have been making. And you're doing a great job. I just wanted to tell you that before I flip the camera around here. So I am going to flip the camera. Facebook is not really creator friendly, and so it doesn't allow me to have two different cameras going. So I'm just going to twist this. So close your eyes or look away so I don't make you seasick here. And I'm going to get you set up above my desk. All right, so find your center. Today I'm working on a black circle. Our sample here is called Teal Flower, and I did that on a black square there. I'm going to call it a rectangle. Apparently I don't know my basic shapes. All right, so yesterday we did some walking the dots. That was kind of the new skill that we learned. And today we're going to use swoops and swipes and swishes. I'm sure there are very specific terms for what that's called, but I use those three words interchangeably, and I'm not sure if that's even right. But that's what I call them, and that's what we're going to make this flower out of. If you want to practice a little bit first, you can grab a piece of paper, and I'll show you what we're doing. When we're talking about swoops and swipes and swishes, we are going to use our stylus tool. Let me get out my tools here. Oh my goodness. I'm a hot mess today. All right, so I got my tool set. Pick a stylus, any stylus you want. When you use rods, we barely touch our surface. We kind of give it a kiss. I talked a little bit about that on the first 2 days, okay? When we use a stylus, it's okay to touch the surface and kind of stamp or use it like a pencil, okay? So when we make swipes, What we're going to do is we're going to dip it into some paint. Again, up over the edge, we want plenty of paint on there. We're going to tap it onto the surface, and you hold it like a pencil. So if you hold it at a diagonal, it should work about the same as if you hold it straight up and down. And then you slowly pull, just like you're drawing with a pencil, until it runs out of paint. And that's a swipe. We're not varying the pressure. It's just like writing, okay? When we want our swipes to go a little bit longer, we're going to add maybe 2, 3 dots, and then slowly pull. And that'll help us make them a little bit longer. We can curve them. So to curve them, you just hold it and you write like you're writing with a pencil, and it'll run out of paint as you pull. If you want your curve to be longer, you need more paint. So you add maybe 2 or 3 dots and then slowly curve. Now I did these with my 2.5mm tool. I'll show you what they look like with my smallest tool. So here's my tiny stylus. So these are going to be much smaller. I forgot to mix up my paint. These are the same paints I had yesterday. I had a little Lynn on them, so my paints might be chunky. So here's a straight line with the smallest one. Straight line with a little extra paint. Curved line. Curved line with extra paint. And so you can do these straight, you can do them curved. There have been times I've gotten even a little fancy. I tried to do it here and I ran out of paint. And given myself a little kind of waggle there. What I'm going to show you is what you don't want to do. And so if you mess up or if it stops too soon, what you don't want to do is go back and then go over it again. Because what's going to happen is it's going to get real fat and it's not going to have that pretty taper. So I'll show you that again. So if I was like, oh, that's not long enough, let me do that again. See how it just gets real fat? Which could be, you know, if you want that to be a design element, that's fine. But usually we're looking for that taper there. So what would happen, what you would do, is if it wasn't long enough, or sometimes they'll just cut out early, is you can take a pencil tip or your tiniest stylus or the tip of a pin, and you can gently pull that down a little bit. But you want to make sure what you're using is a lot smaller. So that's why on one of the other days I mentioned I use these pencils because they have a really small tip to kind of refine some things. So if that happens and you don't get a perfect swoosh, you can kind of go back in there with the tiny tip and just fix it. So you don't get the fat, chunky guy there. Not that I have anything against fat, chunky people. I am a fat chunky. So I should use more fat, chunky swooshes, I guess. All right, ignore me talking. It's the cold medicine, I swear. All right. I'm using the same paint from yesterday, so I'm just going to add a pinch of water because I know that it's probably, my paint's probably dried out just a smidge. And I'm going to add a little more teal because we're using a lot of that color. So go ahead and get your paints ready. Oh, shoot. I meant to say this way in the very beginning. So the day 3 giveaway is going to be a set of 3 dotting stones in the mail. And what you have to do to enter, you could either do it while you're following along with me, or you could do it again. You could do this piece again if you wanted to, but change up the colors, the most unique colors. So you can change them up within the pattern that we're using with the magenta, orange, yellow, teal, and purple. You can change them up with other paints you might have at your house. You can change them up, like you can make pastels by adding white to some of your colors. Lots of different ways to change up the pattern, but I will pick randomly. I'm not going to pick favorites, but anybody who submits a picture into the group with their piece that's got some different colors or a different colorway, it can be the same colors and a different, you know, changing them out. That's how you can enter for the next giveaway for 3 handmade stone dotting surfaces. So that's the next giveaway. All right, all that being said, let's get started. So I've got my center marked. Go ahead and find your center, and I'm just gonna extend my cardinal points just a little bit because our center dot today is large. All right, so I'm going to use my 12 millimeter tool. That is my largest tool, 12 millimeters. And the teal paint. Remember, straight up and down at a 90-degree angle, and make sure you've got plenty of paint on that toolkit. On that rod. Jeez. Sometimes the things I say don't make sense. All right, I am a little off center. I'm way off center. Sometimes I make myself laugh. All right. So this is me. When you do workshops with me, you get a real person. Sometimes I really mess up stuff. All right, I think that looks a little bit better. I really like to use baby wipes or have a wet paper towel to clean off my tools. I think that makes it a little bit easier. I also have Q-tips at my desk, so when I do something goofy like this little dot here, I can easily come in and scoop it up. Alrighty. Excuse me, I'm sorry if I cough tonight. I still got the coughs. I'm going to switch to my stylus. I'm going to use my 2.5 millimeter. So this is my larger of the two. So this end is 3. This is 2.5 millimeters. I'm going to use the 2.5. And my orange paint. And I'm going to add a dot. We're going to add dots around that center circle. Let me move this over here. So I'm going to dot my north, south, east, and west. Halfway in between those will give me 8 dots. And then one in between those gives us 16. Next, I'm going to use my 6 millimeter tool and my teal paint. I'm going to line up my 4 corners. I don't know if you can still see those. I'll mark them just so you can see them on the camera. So I'm going to use 6 millimeters. I'm going to add dots on my 4 corners there. We're going to do these larger teal circles that go around here. 6 millimeters teal paint. Now this circle is a lot larger than the stylus. Make sure you give yourself enough room for that dot to kiss on there. So we're going to do our 4 cardinal points, north, south, east, west, and then we're going to do 1 in the middle. Yes, Amy, I always buy those when I see them. If you're not following the chat, Amy says, just an FYI, Walmart has the Q-tips with the pointy end that work really good. That is really good supply advice, because these are kind of difficult to work with, and when we're working in these small spaces, it can, if I needed to fix that orange or get in between some lines, it's really hard to do. But they make Q-tips that are pointed, and so if you get into dot art, those are really handy as well. I always snag those when I see them. All right, next I'm going to switch to my 3mm stylus end. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 dots in between each of these teal circles. And so I want the dot on the outside to be bigger, the dot on the inside to be smaller, so I can do them at the same time. So I'm going to dip into the paint and then just go 1, 2, and then I redip, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then next we're going to start pulling some swipes, and for this I'm going to use my small stylus, the large end. We're going to use magenta paint to start with. Now if you have chalk, if you have a pencil and you want to make some marks to help you, what I would do is we're going to make these next to the teal, and we want them to be about the same size as this dot. So picture this dot like if you had 2 of them, and then just make a little mark about where that would be if you put another 6mm dot there. You don't have to do this. Sometimes I just like to visually see where I'm starting. And I don't like to draw a circle because you never draw a circle completely right, and then you get frustrated. So just adding that little mark a little ways out kind of helps me visually. So if you've got chalk or a pencil and you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. All right, so I'm going to use the 1.5mm end of my small stylus, the larger end of the small stylus. I'm going to dip into magenta paint. I'm going to start about 6mm out and pull inward, and then I just lift up when I get to that dot. And these go right next to the teal dots. And then take your time with these if you need to, but we're going to do the same thing, same tool. I'm going to dip into teal paint, and then on the left and the right, I'm going to pull in a dot about the same length. I'm going to start kind of at the same point, and I'm going to pull it inward. And so it makes kind of a little triangle. Now I was really close with this one versus over here you can see the black a lot, and that's okay. Sometimes we just do things a little differently. So I'm just going to repeat this the same way. So if you want a little black to show, leave some space. If you like it close together, you can make it a little closer. But whatever you do, do it the same all the way around. That really is the trick with making mandalas, is there's no right or wrong, but whichever way you make it, just make it consistent all the way around. Nobody knows that you didn't mean to do that. So if I'm following a design or following a pattern and I don't have the right size or a different color, nobody knows. That's not what I wanted to do. So when I do these sets of 3, and I do these a lot, these little sets of 3, I call them my engagement rings because they remind me of an engagement ring setting. And I do those quite a bit. As you build onto them, the engagement ring look goes away a little bit. As you can tell, this looks more like a flower, but right now that's what it reminds me of. Just big fat engagement rings. All right, next I'm going to go back to my 3mm stylus tool. That's the largest one I have. And we're going to create kind of a petal that goes around this engagement ring setting. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my 3mm tool, and I'm going to make a dot right next to that magenta line that we created. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Remember to dip and dot each time. Then next I'm going to switch. I'm going to use the same stylus tool, but I'm going to switch from the large end to the smaller end, which should be 2.5mm. And then I am going to pull these petals to each side. Now when I pull the lines, I'm going to visually aim for where I want them to go. So I'm going to dip in my paint, start my swoosh here, slowly pull towards the center of that white dot. But I'm going to stop before I get to, or the yellow dot. I don't know my colors. Okay, so I'm going to put paint on my tool, and I'm going to visually aim for the center of that yellow dot. But I lift up right before I get to it. And then I'm going to start on the next one, put it down, slowly pull, look where I'm going, and then lift. And I'm going to do this all the way around. Go nice and slow. Those will help you pull your lines, and just look where you want the line to go. If yours ends up being more straight and curved, that's absolutely fine too. Like I said, nobody knows that's not what you were trying to do. Next, I am going to move out another row, and we're going to create this element here, which is another set of swipes, the purple and then teal next to it. This time we're going in between these petals. So if you want to, again, kind of mark where you want to start those, visually see how much room you have. I would say to start this, wherever you're, we're all working on different size surfaces. I maybe want mine to start about halfway between the end point and the edge. So I'm just going to come through and make a little line. And I'm going to use my 3mm stylus,
and my purple paint. And this time it's got to go a little farther, so I am going to double dip. I'm going to make a dot, and I'm going to dip again. And I'm going to slowly pull that towards that yellow dot in between those two petals. So double dip, and then slowly pull. Oops, got a paint booger. Sometimes if you are reusing the same paint, even if you cover it, you'll get some chunkies. I always recommend using new paint every time, but I did not follow my own advice. Since I knew I was going to do this every day this week, I've just been putting a little lid, plastic lid on top, which does not work so well. And then the next step, we're going to repeat the same thing, but we're going to use teal. The difference this time is I'm going to go down just a bit. So if I started my purple up here on the line, I'm going to come down just a little bit to bring the ones on the side so that it looks like they're a little bit shorter. So I'm going to dip, double dip, and then I'm going to aim for that center. Dot. And slowly pull. Oops, I went down a little bit on that one. Let's see if I can adjust. Once you get the hang of swoops and swipes, they become pretty easy. And so today's design really was to force us to do them and do them over and over until you get the hang of it. And then once you kind of feel it out and you get the hang of it, then you can use it in all your designs going forward. Next, we're going to use our 6mm tool and orange paint. I'm going to add one orange dot on the other side of that purple swipe. At the end of this, there is one more dot. It's a smaller dot, but don't go all the way up to your edge if you can help it. Leave just a pinch of room. We're going to add 8 of those, one all the way around next to those purple swipes. Yes, I didn't change the size of my tool, Amy. I continue to use the 3mm side.
next we're going to add swipes on each side of that orange. And so visually we are going to this point down here, we're going to come off the side, curve it, and we're going to end at this little point here in the middle. I'm using teal paint, 3mm tool, and I'm going to start right up next to that orange dot and pull inward towards that teal dot. Go nice and slow. That will help you extend the line as far as it needs to go. Can you all tell on camera? I've got a little dip in my stone. So sometimes I cast my own stones and I keep, if I don't, sometimes I sell them, but the ones that I make that are not perfect, I'll just keep to practice on and dot on. And I can tell this was one of those. In person, I cannot tell, like my eye can't see it, but I can see on camera here, there's like a little dip in there. When the light hits it, I can kind of see. All right, next I'm going to add some dots at the end of these petals, and I'm going to alternate colors. I'm using my 3mm tool, so still the large end of my stylus. I'm going to pick a petal to start with, and I'm going to use magenta, and I'm going to add one magenta dot on every other petal. So I end up with 4 of those. And then on the other 4, I'm going to switch to yellow. And I'm going to add a 3mm dot of yellow on each one. And this is where you can kind of tell my pattern tonight was not completely centered, because I have a little more room on one side than the other, but people won't notice. All right, now I'm going to walk the dots. That's what we practiced yesterday. I'm going to switch to the smaller side, so 2.5mm. Where I have my yellow dot, I'm going to walk pink dots on the side. Where I have pink dots, I'm going to walk yellow. So just pick a color to start with. I'm going to start with my magenta and then count. We're going to aim for that center dot down in here. So I'm going to start right next to it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I can fit about 7. We may all be able to fit different amounts just depending on our spacing and how much paint we have on our tool. But I'm going to try to aim for 7 on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I'm going to go to the next one with a yellow dot and do the exact same thing.
I've done my 4 sets of magenta dots, and so I can just wipe off the paint from my tool, and then where I have my magenta center dot, I'm going to do yellow down the sides. And so I'm going to try to keep it the same 7 dots. And I'm going to fill in the rest of the petals with my other color, yellow. And that is all the base dots for this design. Next is top dots, and I'm going to show you what top dots I used, but please remember the challenge tonight is to shake the colors up anyway, so feel free to do your own top dots. For the center, I used an 8mm tool and purple. So I added a purple top dot right there in the middle. On this teal row here, I added 3mm magenta dots with my stylus tool right in the center of the teal. Oh, wonderful. I'm glad you got your swishes down. It took me a long time to get it. And then once it finally clicked, I was like, ooh, that wasn't as hard as I thought. But it took me a really long time to learn swishes, I'll be honest. And I think, honestly, when I'm planning designs, you'll see there's no right or wrong way to make any designs or any art, right? Like everybody kind of has their own style. But I use... now I'll use swishes with my styluses, but there are a lot of dot mandala artists that will use paintbrushes for swishes, and I think that's beautiful, but I don't do it a lot. And I think that I don't do it a lot because in the very beginning, years and years ago when I was learning, I could never get my swishes right, and I was always really mad at myself. And so I think just subconsciously I steer away from those. All right, the last set of top dots, I'm going to add 1 teal dot on top of my orange. And I'm using my 3mm tool. And that is the end of the teal flower design. Thank you all so much who joined me live. Oh, hi Jamie, I'm glad you got able to hop on right before we ended. Yeah, definitely rewatch tomorrow. Feel free to make it on your own time. That's the beauty of having a recording. Sometimes when I sign up for things, I will wait till the end and do stuff all at once since I already have my supplies out. All right, so this is teal flower. And just a reminder that the giveaway is 3 hand-poured mandala stones for you to continue dotting as a giveaway. And in order to enter, just change up the colors. Make them, you can totally use your own colors, or you can just change up the pattern with the colors that we're using.
but that's the challenge, to change up the colors somehow. And then tomorrow we've got this version here, which is called Sweet Sunshine. And I will put up the recording much earlier tomorrow, because I realized how long it takes Facebook to get that up there. So I'm going to go ahead and do the recording for this tonight, and then I'll get that up a little earlier tomorrow for you to work on Sweet Sunshine. And so I will see you guys tomorrow in the recording, and then again on Friday. Have a great night, everyone.